Hello everyone and welcome to Network Playroom. In today's video, I'm going to share some of my best or favorite study tips with you that will hopefully help you learn more efficiently. Now, many of these study tips are commonly known or even obvious, but I still want to highlight them and discuss them in more detail in this video. A little note here, these study tips have worked for me, but they may not necessarily suit your particular learning style. So don't take these as the ultimate truth of how you should study or think that you've done anything wrong by not incorporating these methods in your studies, but take them more as suggestions on how to improve your learning. Hopefully, I can introduce some new ideas or perspectives so that you can build a study strategy that is perfect for you. With that said, let's get started. Alright, so here we go. I've created a short and simple presentation to help me go through the points. So let's get started. Number 1, just keep learning. Now this might sound like stating the obvious, but study something every day, even if it's only for a few minutes. Consistency is the key here. And this is actually a concept that I learned from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. By the way, this is not a sponsored ad or anything. I just like that book. In short, the idea is that if you can improve a little bit every day, it will turn into remarkable results over a long period of time. There's actually a powerful example showing how a minuscule 1% improvement every day will lead you to become 37 times better than when you started after a year. I probably should have included a diagram here to show you the exponential growth that you will gain if you do this repeatedly over 365 days. Next, consistency also beats intensity. I personally much prefer to study for a short time every day rather than do 3 to 4 hour study marathons. I still do long study sessions sometimes. It's not that you have to choose one or the other. They can balance or complement each other. And finally, slow progress is better than no progress. So as long as you're moving forward with your studies, you're advancing, even if it's at a slow pace. So keep going. Let's go to the next slide. Number 2, asking the why. Now, too often we focus on the how instead of the why. When you learn a new protocol, the books often teach you how it works and how to configure it, but it might not explain why we use this protocol and why it was implemented in a certain way. Now, I find it extremely helpful to dig into the history and development of a protocol to understand the fundamental reasons that drove its creation. Now, you don't have to know all the details, but having a general understanding of the why will greatly help with mastering the how. And I've put an example here asking why are routing protocols used and how do they work? So if you ask these both questions, it will greatly help you understand the whole protocol. So why do we use routing protocols? Because we want to dynamically advertise networks instead of manually and statically configuring them. That's the short answer. Now, how do they work? Well, that depends on the routing protocol. Each routing protocol has its own mechanisms to deal with route advertisements and maintaining neighbor adjacencies and so on. Those are topics for other videos, but I just want you to understand this point. All right, let's move forward to the next slide. Number 3, minimum configuration. Now, when learning a new protocol or feature, I like to start with the absolute basics. The idea is to remove all the fluff and understand what is the bare minimum configuration I need to apply to make this protocol work. Now, actually, another key element in this process is understanding the configuration components. Now, let me explain. Let's look at an example like packet filtering or manipulation using policy-based routing. Now, what are the configuration steps needed to drop traffic or forward it independently of the routing table? Now, first, we need to define what traffic we want to influence, and this can be referred to as quote-unquote interesting traffic. Traffic that the device will be monitoring and acting on. Second, we need to match this interesting traffic and determine an action to take on it in a route policy. In our case, that action could be to deny or set another next hop, for example. Third, we need to apply this policy on an interface so it will take effect. So those are the main configuration components that you need to understand to configure policy-based routing. And I maybe should have included that example in the slide here, but I'll give you another example about PGP peering, specifically external PGP peering. Now you should first understand how to configure the most basic ePGP peering before you move on to more advanced or complex cases like multi-hop ePGP or adding features like session authentication or TTL security. Basics first. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Number 4, explain it simply. Now, there's a famous quote by Albert Einstein, I believe. If you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. Now, teaching someone is an excellent test to check if you truly understand something. It is hard to explain a topic to someone if you do not understand it at a sufficient level yourself. This is even more so if your student is outside of the tech industry and truly knows nothing about the subject. Another great way to challenge yourself is to use a limit. Whether it's a time limit, a word limit, or a character limit, it doesn't matter. Because having only a limited space to present a concept is probably more difficult than you think. I'm more than familiar with the last item, a character limit, which is a royal pain sometimes when I'm trying to create my quick study notes. A quick plug-in here, I share my knowledge or snippets from my studies in short tweets, which I call quick study notes. Now, a tweet has a 280 character limit, so it's quite an endeavor to try to fit a subject in that space. I don't want to drag the subject over multiple tweets unless I really have to. This forces me to strip the technologies to bare bones and leave out anything unnecessary. And it's actually a fine line because sometimes you have to oversimplify the topic to get the main idea across, and you sacrifice leaving out some of the important details. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. But anyway, teaching someone and summarizing the topics is an awesome experiment to test your knowledge. Try it, I dare you. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Number 5, lab. Now this one is obvious, but I've included it anyway to stress the importance. You need practical experience, you need to lab. You can read theory until the end of time, but implementation is what ultimately matters. Simply reading theory is not enough. Now here's a comparison. You're not going to build a fit physique by reading about fitness from books. You need to hit the gym and put in the work. Now taking this a step further, it also doesn't make sense to mindlessly perform countless repetitions without a plan. So the best result comes when you understand how you should exercise, that's the theory part, and then you should show up at the gym to do the work, and that's the practical part. The same applies to networking. You can't acquire hands-on experience from books, and you will also not develop your skills in the most efficient way by rushing to the command line right away, skipping all the theory and start guessing or using the help tool furiously. The best result comes from learning some theory first and then solidifying your knowledge by implementing what you have learned. All right, and let's move on to the final slide, number 6. Use the blueprint. Now, regardless of whether you're studying for a specific exam or wanting to learn new skills, you can use the exam blueprint as a guideline. A common method is to copy the topic list from the exam blueprint and paste it into an Excel sheet. Now, this is a great way to not only follow the topics, but also to track your progress. You can mark items as completed, you can color code them to indicate which topics still need revision and you should come back to later. You can add notes, etc. The possibilities are many. Now, at first it can be overwhelming to look at the full list of topics, but it is so satisfying to come back to the document and see your progress. I highly recommend it. So that concludes this video. Those are my favorite study tips. Hopefully you found something helpful in this video. Let me know in the comments. Share your own study tips. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.